So I'm going to start part 2 of your guided notes. So we ended the last part here on things that separate solids from liquids, and we do the china cap, colander, and strainer. I use these are I'm a sucker for a good strainer. I can't pass by a really nice colander or strainer. I've got quite a few. You can also have a smaller sieve. So a smaller sieve is also used as a sifter. This is essentially a mesh screen. So when we do dry ingredients, when we say make muffins or like cake frosting, and we want to sift a food item. So when you sift, you put your dry ingredient only through the mesh screen. And you kind of tap it a little bit into the bowl, and you aerate it and lighten it and fluff it. You mix it together, but you also remove any lumps that might be present in that dry ingredient. A funnel pours liquids from a larger into a smaller. Cheesecloth, I often tell my students, cheesecloth is that type of cloth that you would use if you were going to be a mummy for Halloween. So it is this like super loose gauze. It's a lot like what you may put over a big wound or injury as well. But we have it in a big, huge sheet. We use it for all kinds of things. It is called cheesecloth because it's used in cheese making to separate the curds from the whey. And so you would pour the cheese into that and you would get the solids out, as you can see. So essentially it's like you've ever had cottage cheese. So cottage cheese has both the curds and the whey. So the curds are kind of like the chunky bits if you've ever had that. So we use a bench scraper very often. It is a rigid metal sheet of stainless steel. It is not sharp. It is found in your utensil drawer. We use it to pick up and move things off the cutting board and to scrape that cutting board surface. This is a safety item. It keeps your hands more clean when you're part of your cutting station, and it's very handy. So we use the bench scraper a lot. A bowl scraper, on the other hand, you can use a bowl scraper for what you use a bench scraper for, but a bowl scraper is more flexible, so it'll bend, and it has a rounded edge so you can use it to actually scrape and move out of a bowl. When we start getting into more baking things, so let me move that down here. There are different types of rolling pins. So the baker's rolling pin is just one big solid roll, and you use that. It doesn't have handles. The classic rolling pin that you might be accustomed to using has a handle, and you push it and the centerpiece rolls on it. When you're using a baking rolling pin or a French rolling pin, you use your hands out flat and you kind of use that to roll around. The French rolling pin is tapered on the ends, and so it gets smaller as you move towards the end, and you can actually rotate it, and as you move, you can kind of like do it in different levels and get your dough to different thicknesses. So a classic rolling pin is the same thickness. It's like a big, thick dowel rod. The baker's rolling pin is like a big dowel rod. French rolling pin has tapered ends, and the classic rolling pin has some handles. Spatulas are used in baking as well. So the sandwich spreader has more rounded edges. When you talk about something being offset, that means it has a handle, and then the spatula is going to go up or down a little bit. And so generally it goes down. It's a long, narrow tool. These are pretty flexible. So when you are moving something, it's different than a metal turner or a spatula you'd flip a burger over with. These are usually a little bit more flexible. The straight spatula, they come in different sizes, and they are very, very flexible. And these are used for icing cakes or spreading fillings and glazes. They're designed to put a little bit of pressure on there and to have a little bit of give so that when you spread things, it spreads things nice and smooth. Also used in pastry making, we have a pastry brush. So a pastry brush is used to put egg wash, melted butter, glaze, or another liquid onto a baked good. So when we do a lot of empanadas in my classroom, and so we do a nice egg wash on there, which really helps that baked good. Pastry bags, these can be canvas, plastic, or nylon. So some of them you wash out, some of them you throw away. Pipings, creams, pureed foods. Piping tools are like your cake tips. We have a pretty good collection of those for decorative tips and presses. They're not just used for cake frosting. They have a lot of uses in the classroom. The wire whip or the whisk and the rubber spatula are also items that you will find in your utensil drawer. We use these on a regular basis. The wire whisk, There are two varieties in my classroom. One of them has a more solid end, which is what you'll find in your drawer. We carry some that are a little bit more delicate for sauce making when it comes to sauce making, because we kind of need to put pressure on there. So when we do Alfredo and we do gravy, I've got a couple of different varieties. One of them is a little bit more of a balloon end as opposed to the other one, but these are very common in the classroom. The rubber spatulas we use are heat safe. However, please do not use them in a hot skillet. Even though they are heat safe, that high heat and using them, use a metal utensil. We have stainless steel and we have cast iron here in the classroom. We do not use nonstick. We do not need to use a rubber spatula to move hot food or stir fry in our pans. We have really good utensils for that, and we prefer you use those. And then a skimmer is flat and it has holes, and this will remove foam from stock or soup. It'll also remove solids from other ingredients. We don't really use a cook's fork because we don't do giant, huge pieces of meat. But if you're grilling or barbecuing like a really big meat, this can be used to flip it over. Tongs are absolutely the most important thing that you're ever going to use in the kitchen. Tongs are essentially my second pair of hands. So I use a tong to move a bowl and lift a lid, grab things that might be hot sometimes. This is the only thing that you have two of in your drawer. So in your utensil drawer, in your kitchen, in the food lab, you should have two sets at all times. And so these are extremely common. Really important for sanitation to make sure that you are not flipping raw meat and then going back and touching cooked meat to flip that again. Either give your tongs a wash or have a separate set for raw and for cooked. So in the restaurant industry, those are color coded. If you see a red handle, that's usually a raw handle. Yellow or green usually means that it's cooked. So if you're working the grill station and you're flipping a lot of meat and you're dealing with like, these things are raw, these things are almost cooked, these things are cooked, you would have a different set of tongs, and you cannot cross-contaminate by crossing over. Some other things that you'll use, some spoons. So there are solid ones, which will take liquid, perforated or slotted, and those will leave the liquid and take the solid. A pie server is a triangular shape. So when you take a round pie and you cut it into pieces, those pieces are usually triangular. If you try to use a flat, you're going to kind of mess up your pieces of pie. So a pie server is designed to go completely underneath a piece of pie and move it so that you have the best presentation and it doesn't get all like wadded up on the plate or in the box. So it's a wedge spatula. For measuring equipment, there's its own set. I'm going to make a video itself just for the measuring equipment. But when we talk about measuring equipment, we have looked at volume measurement. Volume is how much you can put in a cup. We've talked about the fact that that is not always accurate. And so there are different types of measurements that do volume versus liquid versus spoons versus ladles versus scales by weight. So I'm going to make a video just on that so that you kind of understand that.